Hello everybody and welcome to another video here at TD channel. On the previous week we did a lot of work to create a very simple camera exporter to explain how the JSON file format could be used as a very quick file inter-exchange program file format. What we did is we took the time to go over how JSON works, and then we wrote a little script in Maya that wrote all the JSON information for a camera, especially the transformation for the camera and the lens information. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use that JSON file to be able to bring that data back into another application. In this case, it's going to be Blender. So let's get started here. Here I have my terminal, and what I'm going to do now is as you can see by the location where I am, is I'm already all the way down inside the blender.app folder, and if you go all the way down into content and Mac OS, if you do a list of this directory, and list is ls, you'll see there's two files, a 2.59 and a blender. So if you just type here blender, that's going to start up Blender, and this shell here will be the parent process of Blender. So anything that Blender needs to tell us is going to be written over here, and that's why I like to launch applications this way instead of just the icon, because sometimes the application is going to be trying to tell you something like I couldn't find this, or I found an error, and when you just run it from an icon, a lot of times you don't get that. So this is one way that a lot of TDs work this way. So let's look at what it will take to write an importer for our file. So we're going to go first we're going to configure our desktop a little bit to do that, and actually I have a starter file for this, so it's probably better to use that. So here we go, and here's the script that we're going to write, but I'm going to go ahead and clear that. Let's see how we do this. Okay, so here we have our scene. It's a very simple scene. It mainly recreates what we had in Maya. It's a one unit dice or cube here on top of a plane. So we're going to write our little script to be able to import things. So over here we're going to go, and you're just going to create a new file. And then we're going to start with our import. So because we're going to be reading stuff from the OS, we're probably going to need the OS module. We're also going to need the JSON module and the math module, because we're probably going to need a little bit of math here and there. We're also going to import some Blender modules, such as BPI, which is the main Python module for Blender, and also mathutils, which we usually use for matrices and stuff like that. So we're going to create one single function here. It's going to be called import camera. So define import camera, and it's going to take one single parameter, which is going to argument, which is going to be called file name. So that being done, the first thing that we're going to do is, like I usually do, is write a little bit of pseudocode of what the steps are for accomplishing what I need to do. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure the provided file exists, right? Because the user is going to give us this file over here, this file name, and we have to make sure that that exists before we even do anything else. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new camera, and then we're going to give it a unique name. And chances are we're going to use data from the JSON file, because if you remember correctly from the previous video, we exported the name into the camera. So we're going to be able to maintain the camera name as we move the camera from one application to another. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to set the current in and out frame for frame range. Because if you remember correctly, we also exported the frame range for our scene from Maya. So this is pretty much all we're going to need as the main steps. So let's go ahead and start expanding this a little bit. Here we're going to use a very simple statement here to make sure that this exists. If not os.path exists, and then we're going to say file name. So if the file name does not exist, we're going to print, and we're in Python 3 on Blender. That's why now you have to actually put your text inside a parenthesis, because now it's a function. Before it wasn't. I think it was a system keyword. So we're going to do this, and we're going to type the provided file does not exist. Close this, and then we're just going to go ahead and return. So at this point, if the file doesn't exist, the script is going to stop right there. So now that we know that the file exists, we're going to read that file. So we're going to create a variable called fileIn. We're going to do open, and we're going to give it file name, and the mode is going to be read, because we're only going to be reading this file. We're not going to write anything into it. Next, we're going to do camera data, and that's going to be JSON.load file in. So what this does is it uses the JSON module to load the whole content, the complete contents of the file that we just referenced to, is going to be read into memory as a JSON object. Since we already have the JSON object in memory, we're going to go ahead and close file in. So that's it. So far we have our JSON data already in our script, and now we're going to go ahead and create the light. So by looking at the documentation of Blender, this is pretty much how you create a light. You do bpi the ops object camera add. So that creates us a new light. And actually, you know what? This shouldn't be here. Got a little ahead of myself. Okay, and then we're gonna move this. Okay, so now we're gonna give it a unique name. So we're gonna do new camera is equal to bpi dot context dot selected Okay, so basically what this does is whenever you create the camera, it becomes the current selected object. And then what you're telling is that using the selected, the context of the current selected object, we just ask for the first object that's selected, and that's going to be the camera. So we store that in the new camera variable. So now we can do new camera.name equals camera data camera name. So we're starting to create our camera and change things as we need them. New camera data.angle, and basically this is how you access the field of view of the lens of the camera that we just created. So we go new camera.data.angle, and we're going to make that equals to math.radians camera data, and then we're going to open this and put HFOV, because if you remember correctly, we stored the horizontal and vertical field of view coming out of Maya. Now we stored that value in degrees, and the Blender camera works in radians, which are the two different units that you can use to represent angles. So what we have to do is we use the math module to convert the current value that's coming in as angles and convert it into radians. So once that's done, we pretty much, at this point, we could run the script to make sure that we're able to create the camera. So let's give it a try, and we're gonna go ahead and give this a name. Blender camera .py, and I think once it's typed there, all I have to do is import Blender camera . Okay, so now it's complaining about some errors here and there. So let's look what we did wrong. Okay, we found a couple of little bugs that we had. Basically, we were missing a couple of dots here and there to let us know that we were trying to access. For instance, up here we were missing this dot add, and down here we were missing this dot over here, because basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to access the selected objects, and over here we're trying to access the method, the function that creates the camera. So that is done. As you can see down here, I'm able to import the module, and that's where it's importing from. So if I go ahead and do actually import Blender camera as BC, I like to create these little handles, and I can do BC dot import camera, and then let's go and get the path of where we start that camera. So I'm going to navigate here to where I have this file. We have pipeline, JSON, and then so we're in here, and the file, let's copy this. The file is called test.json. Okay, so we're running into another bug over here. Let's look at our a little script and see what's going on. Okay, so we finally figured out what was wrong, and what was really wrong. Before, I thought that in these two locations here I needed a dot, and actually I needed an underscore. And the thing is, I have a little printout over here that I'm using as an aid, and for some reason the printer was just missing those little dashes, so it was throwing me off completely. So now that this is there, we should be able to go ahead and re-import this module. And in Blender, in Python 3, you would use a module called imp, and I believe here we're going to do imp.reload okay, so that should have reloaded, and actually I should probably do it with a small handle just to make sure it's the right one. So now we can try using this file again. So there you go. We ran the import camera, which is this one, and it got all the way over here. It created the file it created the camera with the name based on the JSON file, and the camera, as you can see, is right here, but of course it's not positioned properly or anything, but it is there. And if you look at the camera data, the field of view kinda has been set. Let's see, where is it? There, the lens is 51 degrees, which that is not the default value of the Blender camera. So we have that working. So let's go ahead and delete this camera, and let's keep developing our script. Right now we're pretty much going to get into the meat and potatoes of how the script would work. So let's go over here and handle the frame range. So what we're going to do is create a variable called start camera data frame start, and then end equals camera data frame end. So you can see how easily we're able to get information back from the JSON file now that it is a JSON object called camera data. So here we're going to do scene is equals to BPI context dot scene. So we're going to get the current scene, and now we're going to set its frame range. So scene dot frame start equals start, scene dot frame end equals to end, and then we're going to set the player all the way to the beginning. So scene dot frame set, and there's a function, so we open parentheses and we tell it to go to start, and that's it. So pretty much this has set the frame range, and now here we're going to go ahead and import the transformation of the camera for every frame in frame range. So we're gonna start by creating a rotation matrix for rotating the camera, because and here's one of the tricky things that you run into when you're trying to write exporters. The Maya camera is Y up, while the Blender camera is Z up. The way that you fix this is by applying a 90-degree rotation matrix. You create a matrix that has been rotated on 90 degrees on the X axis, and then you multiply that matrix by the incoming transformation. So let's look at how that will work. We're gonna call this XROT for rotation, and math utils, and we're gonna type here matrix rotation. So we're gonna create a rotation matrix, math.radians 90 degrees, and then we're going to tell it it's a 4x4 matrix, and we're going to tell it that you need to rotate it on the X. So that's going to create us a new matrix, and then what we're going to do is we're going to iterate over all the frames. So for I in, so we're going to go for I in range, and then we're going to go to start, and then we're going to do end. Actually, we have to turn it into an integer, so we're going to do integer start, integer end, +1. And the reason why we have to turn them into integer is that when data comes from a JSON file, by default, pretty much everything is, well, actually, no, I think we stored it as a string. So it's probably coming in as a string, and we need to convert it just to make sure. So we have that, which is going to create our range over which we're going to loop. Then we're going to go down here, and we're going to create a matrix in, that's going to be equal to camera data. And here we're going to have to do a little bit of playing with some of this information. So we're going to do camera data frames, and we're going to get matrix world, because this is the world matrix that we stored, and then we're gonna convert the I, the index, into a string, because if you remember correctly, and we should take a good look at what the JSON file looks like. So we're gonna go here, open text block, and we're gonna go where is this? Okay, let's just cancel out of here, and let's open it in a different application. And here we go, and we're gonna go ahead and open, we're gonna go here, and go to this location and test.json. This is what we exported last time. So if you look at the file format, basically we have frames. That's the first entry, the first key. The next one is matrix world, and then over that we have a whole bunch of different entries, and each one of those is the frame number, but we stored it as a string, so we need to convert the I into string so we can look it up. So we're going to go back over here, we create that into string, and that is pretty much our matrix in. Here we go, we're going to create a little compensated matrix that's going to rotate things around. So we're going to call this frame matrix, because it's a matrix for a current frame, and then we're going to do rotate xrot times, and xrot is this matrix that we created here, is the one that's rotated on the x degree, on the x axis. So xrot times math utils dot matrix, then we open and close, and let's see how this goes. It goes matrix in from 0 to 4. And this is basically, we're just conforming the matrix information to the way that Blender needs it to be able to build a matrix with this function. So it's basically a set of rows, matrix in, and this one's going to be 4 to 8. This one's going to be 8 to 12. And this last one is going to be 12 to 16. I'm going to do this, and look at that. So there we have created our new matrix by extracting the data from what was in matrix in and multiplying that by xrod. So that is done, and now what we're going to do is we just have to apply this to the new camera. So we do new camera dot matrix world, and this is how you access the matrix world in Blender. Frame matrix, and then we do new camera dot keyframe insert. Let's see, insert is actually a function, so insert rotation Euler, and the frame is going to be the current frame, and remember the current frame index is I. So right now we applied the transformation to the camera, and then we're gonna create keyframes for the rotation, and then we're going to create another one for the location, for its translation. So new camera keyframe insert, and here we're going to do location, and frame equals I. So pretty much that's all we needed to write, and as you can see here, we have a total of 41 lines, and that's combining all the extra space and the comments that we have. This is how easy it is to be able to read JSON data and convert like a camera, you know, be able to create a simple way to export cameras from one application to another. So this being loaded over here, what we can do is go ahead and try to reload that. It didn't give us any error, so hopefully we typed it pretty good, and we're going to try to run it again. So let's look for that command. Here it is, and if we run it up, what do we have here? The camera is pointing pretty much where it's supposed to be. It has its right name. Down here we can see there's a whole bunch of keyframes. If I change this, for instance, to the graph editor, you can see all the keyframes that have been brought in, and as we move the playhead, you can see that the camera is actually moving. And if we go over here and let's look through the camera, so view, where is it? It's over here. So as you can see, the camera pretty much it matches exactly as what we were getting in Maya. And one way you can make sure is you render the sequence in both applications, then you bring them both into a composite, and you do a very simple wipe where you can do an A/B between the two footages. And as you can see on this video right here, you can see things pretty much match. I mean, you can see that the shading is a little bit different, but the location of pretty much every feature is dead on. So there you have it. With a very little bit of programming and leveraging something as simple as a JSON file format, we're able to write a very simple camera exporter. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you soon.